Chapter 171, Wild Opinions, Part 2. Nowadays, electronics were delivered on the day of purchase, but of course, the customer could choose another day if he preferred so. Lu Shu brought Lu Xiaoyu home, and while they were at their door, Li Xianyi saw them and waved at Lu Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu, come here. I bought you some good food today. As he finished, he took out a bag of tidbits from his house for Lu Xiaoyu, insinuating a widening gaze from Little Fury. Why did this old man have so much good food? Little Fury stared at the old man again as if he was a saint. What were you guys busy with today? The old man gestured for them to come over. But just then, the electronics delivery arrived. Lu Shu ran over to help with the moving, and just when the worker wanted to tell Lu Shu he wouldn't be of much help, Lu Shu lifted the air conditioner without effort and briskly walked into his house. The worker was shocked. It was his first time bumping into something like this. Young man, are you a metahuman? I'm a Daoyuan student, Lu Shu replied calmly. The worker calmed down upon hearing the words Daoyuan student, as if everything explained itself. Li Xianyi was rather confused seeing such a truckload of electronics. So Lu Shu really did sell those stuff to buy electronics. He then looked over at Lu Shu's empty wrist. You didn't keep a single one for yourself? Lu Shu placed a box down in front of his house and laughed. What's the point of wearing that extra stuff? It's more practical to trade it for something useful. You're rather simple, Li Xianyi smiled and didn't say anything else. But another question suddenly came to Li Xianyi's mind. How did this kid earn so much from the remains? Truth to be told, Lu Shu wanted to save that Omega watch for his own use, but after thinking, he wasn't a wealthy person, and would that watch mean he would fit in with the higher rungs of society? Probably not. So it was better to change it for $20,000. This way, Lu Xiaoyu and his plan of going for a holiday could be fulfilled. Looking at their schedules now, they could start planning for the holiday. They should first decide where to go, and then what to do. Lu Shu didn't really feel like joining a tour group. Apparently, some less expensive tours loved luring tourists to shopping centers. Not buying anything would result in a less satisfying tour, and the tourists might even be threatened by the tour guide. Although Lu Shu's powers were quickly increasing, and he could annoy whichever wicked tour guide he wanted to, the problem was that Lu Shu didn't want to create unnecessary troubles. After all, weren't holidays meant to be fun and happy? Of course, there were black sheep in every industry. Not all tour guides were greedy, and those greedy tour guides probably made a living in those value tours. Lu Shu was curious if this sort of tour guides bumped into Daoyuan students. Would people start reminding the tour guides to be more careful and to avoid getting in trouble with Daoyuan students? After all, everyone in Daoyuan class had basic fighting capabilities. Lu Shu wasn't too sure. In fact, most people only heard stuff and rumors about some places. If they were to really know what it was, they had to really go and experience it for themselves. He looked on as the workers placed his old electronics in his yard. He would hand these over to the rag and bone man when he came over. These things might be able to sell for $50 each. Lu Shu then turned his head unknowingly to look at his tomatoes. His face turned dark immediately. The tomatoes which were ripening were gone. Gone. Lu Shu was extremely frustrated. He had waited a whole winter for the tomatoes, and they were gone just like that? Did they gain their own consciousness and ran away? He looked around for the tomatoes, and to be honest, Lu Shu's first reaction was to think that the tomatoes really gained consciousness. After all, he had subconsciously felt that all living things could gain their own consciousness, just like Little Fury. He was pretty sure of this fact after his time in the remains. Speaking of Little Fury. He then looked over at Little Fury only to see it holding a half-eaten tomato. Moreover, he was still chewing. Little Fury noticed Lu Shu's angry gaze and wanted to run immediately. Before his tiny legs could even move, he was caught by Lu Shu. Little Fury. Lu Shu was livid. The tomatoes he grew throughout the entire winter were taken by this squirrel. Li Xianyi was curious at the side. Lu Shu, which town did you come from? What accent is this? Accent? What accent? Lu Shu did not bother to reply at all. Was this his problem? No. Lu Shu turned around and stared furiously and little fury. It was slightly guilty and passed the remaining half of a tomato to Lu Shu, its eyes looking over at Lu Xiaoyu, begging for help. When he was planting the tomatoes, he had reminded Lu Xiaoyu not to eat it secretly. Once they were ripe, he would make some tomato eggs for her. In the end, he managed to protect the tomatoes from Lu Xiaoyu but not from little fury. Lu Shu thought for a long time but did not know how to punish it. He then said spitefully, "Let me tell you. Within the next month, you have to come to this garden every day to pluck out the weeds. Not one day less." Little Fury almost cried. Did I have nothing better to do than to go around stealing tomatoes? It wasn't even as good as its own fruit. It's all right if I couldn't get into the palace in the remains, it's all right if my tree got uprooted by someone. Now I actually have to work for someone. Little Fury really wanted to run away if it wasn't this dangerous outside. This world was actually very amicable. But when he was watching television with Lu Xiaoyu, they watched a martial arts film. Little Fury didn't know what a drama was and it only felt that the featured people on the television were extremely powerful. My God, the quick blades and powerful blows. The people could even fly, walk on water and perform all sorts of gimmicks. Its little bit of squirrel strength could not compare with the humans at all. Without even considering the people on the television, he could not hold a candle to the girl right beside him. The aura from the normal old man next door was immense and it made him feel immense fear. He felt much stronger than that fatty who unrooted his tree. Humans are really powerful. Back then, he didn't see many weaknesses of Dao Yuan's students. When Lu Li stole the fruits, Little Fury had already gone into the core of the remains with the two trees. What Lu Li stole were merely the remaining fruits. Afterward, Little Fury even witnessed the practitioners of the Heavenly Network in action. When they were out shopping for electronics today, it also saw many humans, so many that its mind was numb. Why are there so many humans? In this different world, Little Fury had many wild and crazy opinions of humans. So wild that it was scared to death. Chapter 172, Parent Meeting, Part 3, The electronics at home were all replaced with brand new ones. The first device Lu Xiaoyu experienced was the television. Lu Shu had even subscribed to a cable television and changed the receiver. The cable TV also came with broadband and there was even Wi-Fi at home now. Lu Shu was suddenly feeling blessed, and life had become more comfortable. Letting Lu Xiaoyu enjoy her newfound happiness from the new television, Lu Shu went back to ponder the things he wanted to do in the future. Training was definitely of top priority as only the strength from training could be beneficial in keeping a footing in this era. Only then could Lu Shu settle down. Just from the money-earning incident during the remains, he could not have accomplished that without strength. In other words, if he had followed the Dao Yuan class training method, he couldn't have earned that sum of money. Although Lu Shu was going along with the flow, he had independence. The others relied on the Heavenly Network to impart training methods and resources, but Lu Shu didn't need them. The magical stones and magical energy were things he had not much use for. Lu Shu wasn't unambitious, just that his objective wasn't to obtain benefits or power but to have the ability to assure his safety and freedom. After thinking about training, it was about daily life. Daily income was still essential as chances to earn money in remains wouldn't come by so often. This could be compared to the lottery. If someone happened to win the lottery by luck, he would feel as if he could depend on it for his living. He might even give up his normal life to spend his fortune on the lottery, ultimately ending up in debts and breaking his own family apart. Such cases weren't uncommon. Lu Shu had always been more practical. He wouldn't bet his hopes on the next remains and how much money he could earn from it. Selling stinky tofu to feed his family was still an option. In the future, once the gray area for practitioners appeared, he could rely on selling his things, such as magical stones, on the black markets. Only at that time would his material needs be fully satisfied. Speaking of remains, who knew when the next remains would resurface in Yuzhou? And Lu Shu felt the need to establish a closer connection with Li Xiao. After all, he was still a normal Daoyuan student, and whether he could enter the next remains would be solely dependent on this unreliable principal. A collaborated business with the school principal just felt weird. Considering his standard of living, Lu Shu thought and finally allocated studying as his third priority. Education background wasn't important, a diploma wasn't important, but heritage was. In fact, through his conversations with Jiang Shuyi, he understood that the level of a country's heritage could very likely determine its position and strength in this era. But Lu Shu was curious, what exactly did that mean? From the looks of the Daoyuan training method, this was the work of that heavenly king Shi Xuejin to provide an effective system for imparting training methods, based on individual levels. Everyone would just need to follow the class training methods to increase their strength. Many other prospering places with a high level of education also had such a way of heritage, giving their own local practitioners an easier time. This didn't mean that other places wouldn't have practitioners, but just that the practitioners in these places would have a much harder time figuring out the training on their own. Cultural heritage didn't determine the current position but would come into effect after the full recovery of magical energy, and would determine a country's practitioner's strength as a whole. Lu Shu jokingly asked that wouldn't there be some evil plotting Western church like the Holy See cultivating their strength as well? Jiang Shuyi gave a weird look and nodded but didn't dare to say anything else. In the organization behind the Holy See, the followers were controlled by the Cardinal's Secretary of State and half of the Cardinal were already practitioners. Lu Shu almost choked on his water, whatever he thought of really happened. From cultural heritage to education, Lu Shu had always emphasized on Lu Xiaoyu's homework as he felt that education was important. In the era of practitioners, many Daoyuan students had given up on their cultural studies, but Lu Shu didn't. At this moment, the Heavenly Network had yet to mention anything about the high school exam. Would it be that the high school students would give up schooling and join the Heavenly Network right away, or to continue their training in university? Lu Shu felt that not going to university was impossible. The squad was now recruiting undergraduates to join them, and why would the Heavenly Network want to stop their normal education? And so learning was still important, and it would be good to have a backup plan. And it would help when taking the entrance exams into university as well. It wouldn't be as appealing to say that you're from some low-ranking university. At this moment, the future was still a blur. Lu Shu wasn't the only one with no idea what's in store, the members of the Heavenly Network didn't know too. During these few days in the remains, Lu Shu was lagging behind in his homework, which was something he's not used to. Lu Shu thought and sent a message to his group chat, really envious of those who can go to school. Can anyone tell me what the lessons had covered so that I can self-study? On the other hand, the normal students in school were envious that the Daoyuan students could have a break until next week when they say Lu Shu's message. From Li Qingyu's distress. From. Lu Shu felt that something was not right. Why is today's distress points so little? Where's the distress points from Yi Lingling? She must have blocked me. Does she not treasure our friendship as classmates? Lu Shu then sent the message to everyone individually. From Yi Lingling's distress, plus 666. At this moment, Lu Shu received a notification from Shi Fei about a parents' meeting to discuss the incident. At this point in time, the parents that had lost their children to the remains were still begging and crying in devastation outside empty Beimang camp. The media had censored this incident, but it didn't mean that it could just pass by like this. The number of student casualties in the remain was 300 plus. Now that the Daoyuan class had suddenly notified the surviving students of a parents' meeting, what could have happened? Lu Shu went onto the Golden Foundation forum to take a look, and it turned out that not only was Luo Cheng affected, but the Daoyuan class in other places were holding a parents' meeting too. Something major was going to happen. Chapter 173, New Fruit, Part 1, Lu Shu was rather annoyed after he received Shifei's message. This was the first time he was informed of a parent meeting. In the past, when he was still at the orphanage, he would attend normal public schools. The teachers of the school knew about the situation of these students very clearly. Initially, these kids couldn't even afford to go to school, and only with the help of an entrepreneur could they attend school. Prior to that, everyone had lessons in the orphanage by their own orphanage staff. It was already a miracle to be able to sustain his good academic performance to get into Luocheng International School, despite such circumstances. Most orphans ended up as thieves and criminals. Their own character and upbringing were contributing factors, but it wasn't fair to claim that society was not to be blamed at all. After Lu Shu went to high school, there weren't parent meetings anymore. If there was anything such as trouble, they'd call the parents down personally. Who'd bother with a parent meeting? High schools which organized such meetings were few if any. So after Lu Shu came to Luocheng International School, parent meetings never occurred in his mind. And in the end, his normal school didn't organize one, and instead, Daoyuan class is organizing a parent meeting. What meeting? I don't have parents, all right. Lu Shu was slightly annoyed. At this point, not having parents wasn't something sad to Lu Shu anymore. There were only some exceptions, such as that day on Mt. Beimeng. Under the dark sky and looking at all the other parents, Lu Shu occasionally wondered how his own parents looked like. Usually, he wasn't the least sad. Apart from some troublesome matters. It was indeed troublesome for an underage teenager to not have parents. Dao Yuan's parent meeting this time definitely involved something important. Based on Lu Shu's thinking, it was likely regarding the deaths at the remains. Which students would stay and which would go? Or maybe the Heavenly Network wanted to change the education structure. No matter what it was about, it was definitely very important. Lu Shu was troubled. Who would he ask to go? The only person around him who could pass off as his parent would be Li Xianyi, or maybe Auntie Lu. But these two had the identity of leaders of the Golden Foundation, and it wasn't very appropriate for them to go. If Li Xianyi went, the entire Heavenly Network would definitely feel tense, as if an enemy came into their territory. Moreover, they did not have any blood relations. Why would they attend the parent meeting? Apart from assuming that they weren't willing, if Li Xianyi went alone, it would be sufficient for the Heavenly Network to associate Lu Shu with the Golden Foundation. Would he still be able to go into the remains of their country then? Maybe everyone would be allowed to go except for him if that happened. He just experienced victory and success in the remains. How could he give up future remains so easily? It would be fine if he was part of the Golden Foundation, but in reality, he wasn't. It was like he wasn't part of either party. In actual fact, he didn't want to be on either side. There is no mistaking that humans are civilized and social creatures. But all that was based on the foundations of rules and regulations of the past. If one did not have the ability or powers to be the best, he had to abide by the rules of the society. But what was the situation now? Lu Shu definitely had the ability to increase his class and earn some money, then live life day by day. When practitioners achieved Class B onward, would they be constricted to standing by societal rules and regulations? Even if they were, what about those in Class A? Simply speaking, if a Class A stayed in the capital, you'd be aware that there was no way you could harm this person. So would you still throw a grenade in his direction? The rules and regulations of society were now being slowly reconstructed. A huge change was impending, and there were bound to be conflicts and resolutions, but all these wouldn't happen overnight. No one knew what societal norms would be like. So to Lu Shu, the most appropriate choice was to grow and develop slowly under the shelter of the Heavenly Network. But if he suddenly claimed that he was the best in the world and that he should be part of the Golden Foundation, instead of the Heavenly Network, perhaps on the same day next year, the weed in front of his tomb would be a meter tall? He was now a member of the Heavenly Network, and as part of this huge organization, he wanted to slowly understand the changes in the world. He merely made the safest choice, to integrate into the organization without much attention. Since no one else was suitable to go and Lu Shu couldn't miss this parent meeting, he could only go on his own. Coincidentally, he had to buy new clothes. He bought a set which made him look more mature, but people could tell the truth easily due to his kitty face. But Lu Shu still felt the need to at least act more mature at the meeting. Lu Shu returned home after buying the clothes, but got an earful from Lu Xiaoyu, who couldn't stand that look. "You don't look the least bit like a parent, you don't have the face of one." After saying that, she ransacked the house and found a pair of old glasses for Lu Shu. The landlords removed the lens. Lu Shu removed the lenses from the glasses and put them on. He turned to the mirror and was surprised to see that he looked much more mature. He then turned to look at Lu Xiaoyu. In the past, people on the web always noted, how do girls master makeup and styling under no one's guidance after they reach a certain age? Looking at Lu Xiaoyu managing to give him a different look now, Lu Shu felt that this issue was a mystery. Lu Shu went back to his room and Lu Xiaoyu was training by herself outside. As for Little Fury, Lu Shu did not have any plans for it. As for Lu Shu, he had to persevere. He still had to practice swordplay the next morning, and after that, he had to sell stinky tofu. Lu Shu wasn't the type of person to just idle around. He had not entered the lottery for a long time. He now had 85,000 distress points at his disposal. After many days causing distress in the Remain, his income recently had slowly diminished, only getting a few points occasionally. Lu Shu pondered and decided to use 5,000 for the lottery. As for the rest, he would save up to 160,000 to light up his 6th star. His really wanted to know if another little sword of the 7 souls of instincts will be conjured after lighting up the 2nd nebula. The moonlight was thin and delicate outside his window. Lu Shu sat below his bed and pressed the button for the lottery. The wheel started spinning as usual. And during his first attempt at the lottery, Lu Shu saw a white fruit which was the size of a peach. The needle then pointed at it. The white fruit looked extremely illusory, as if it was formed by swirling clouds. Lu Shu was surprised. This was actually a new fruit. Chapter 174, Sea of Qi, Part 2. Lu Shu felt that he had not seen a different prize in an extremely long time. It was stinky tofu every day, so much that he had subconsciously treated this lottery as a tofu buying system. But just as this fruit appeared, Lu Shu's surprise felt like a floodgate which just opened, and clear fresh water flowed through. The mysteriousness of the refresher fruit aside, the celestial fruit was practical for training. This experience in the Remains had taught him that training diligently was an act which complemented his development. The most effective was still annoying other people. Lu Shu opened his system's inventory and saw the name of the fruit, Qi fruit. He was stunned. He understood what a celestial fruit was, but what was a Qi fruit? Lu Shu ate this white fruit in one bite and suddenly felt the fruit melt into a cloud of Qi energy which entered his body. The Qi flowed to his 4 limbs like a waterfall, and it flowed back from the 4 limbs, eventually settling below his navel area. The settled Qi swayed gently and it felt like a bundle of strength. This was actually pure feeling, and it wasn't practical, but Lu Shu felt extremely comfortable. Although nothing had changed, it seemed like some sort of pure energy was slowly dissipating and stabilizing. He was rather curious as to what use this Qi fruit actually had. After eating it, there didn't seem to be any obvious use, just like that flame in his heart. Although he acknowledged the existence of it, he didn't know the use of it. Lu Shu entered the lottery another 49 times, and he managed to obtain 2 Qi fruits after 50 tries. The rest were all, as usual, stinky tofu. 2 Qi fruits, but no evident change in himself. At 3 a.m. in the morning, Li Xianyi was already holding onto the middle school math book in his yard. He also had Auntie Lu install a lamp outside their house so that he could conveniently read his the moment Li Xianyi saw Lu Shu. Continue to practice your picks. Lu Shu thought for a moment before asking, when I was running around the Remain for 2 days, it felt as if I could achieve the same effect as practicing swords. Li Xianyi nodded. Vitality is extremely wonderful and mysterious. Normal practitioners use magical energy to improve their physical aspects, while what we use are will and determination. So when can I break through? Lu Shu asked curiously. You? Li Xianyi narrowed his eyes at him before reverting his attention back at his math book. It's still early, don't look so far. Why not you shout the word breakthrough and see if you break through? For things such as training, actions speak louder than words. Li Xianyi felt that he couldn't allow Lu Shu to feel that his own training was too smooth. After all, teenagers had to have their characters tested. This was much better now compared to when he was younger. In the past, when he asked his master when he could attain Aura Blade, his master's first words were 20 years for the foundation. And that felt really sour. But Li Xianyi also considered Lu Shu's words seriously. Lu Shu never liked to ask people for help, and he wanted to see if this kid could control his temptation, to ask him how he could break through earlier. To be honest, he didn't have big tips, but he did have small shortcuts which he felt he couldn't reveal to Lu Shu yet. Okay, Lu Shu nodded his head and didn't speak anymore. What did okay mean? Now that he had met Lu Shu and Lu Xiaoyu, the old man was much more tolerant, and this sort of minor incident didn't agitate him. He was clear that a person with determination and calm character could go far in terms of vitality. In the past, he spent 2 years to unlock his Sea of Qi using his will, and Lu Shu seemed to have more potential than him, so perhaps a year and a half would be enough. Looking at Lu Shu's training reminded Li Xianyi of his past. In that era, Li Xianyi was so skinny that his teacher had to search the mountains for herbs to provide nourishment for his body's foundation. Magical energy was scarce during that time, and without the help of herbs and medicinal baths, training wouldn't have been possible. At that time, his master loved toying with him. Little Xianyi, the day you unlock your Sea of Qi, I'll buy you candy and bring you to a show in the city. This was Li Xianyi's greatest motivation at that time. The sooner he could unlock his Sea of Qi, the sooner he could eat candy and watch shows. Little Xianyi, you're the cream of the crop in terms of aptitude. Unlocking your Sea of Qi will probably take about 20 years. Li Xianyi never understood how other students were treated as unique and the best while he felt like he was being toyed with. Little Xianyi, master is getting old. Whenever there's meat, let me eat more. One more for me and one less for you. At that time, Li Xianyi didn't dare to take a single piece of meat for half a year. But his master's body was in great condition, radiating with a glow every single day. But with the bare magical energy at that time, even the strongest could not withstand the test of time. In a blink of an eye, the young man had journeyed with his sword and managed to become the leader of the Golden Foundation, while all that was left of his master were memories and ashes. Little Xianyi, if you still don't unlock your Sea of Qi, I'd get angered to death by you even if I don't die of old age. All you do is play every day instead of training with your sword. Seems like I must teach you a secret. Make a shout for every swing you make. Make 10,000 shouts and your Sea of Qi will be unlocked. So Li Xianyi gained motivation immediately after listening to the advice, and after 10,000 swings later, nothing happened. When he looked for his master to question him, his master gave him another technique to stall him, saying that the previous technique didn't suit him. After all, it was normal for different techniques to have different effects on different people. Only after he grew up did Li Xianyi know how sly his master was. Li Xianyi then realized that he himself was very old, to the point that he was living through his memories. He remembered the past and said jubilantly to Lu Shu, I'll teach you a secret. Shout for every swing you make. Use your breathing to move your body, it could help with the breakthrough. Lu Shu took it with a pinch of salt and tried it with his sword, open. Just then, Li Xianyi, who treated this as a joke, initially realized that under this sudden shout, there were indeed thin clouds of qi flowing around. That qi was rather thick and real. The Sea of Qi was really opening. Damn, how long did he take to unlock his own? 2 whole years. How long did Lu Shu take? 2 months. Did his master not lie to him? He felt that his world had been a lie. Lu Shu felt that after his pick, the originally silent and traceless qi started flowing again. He was curious as to what happened, but all he saw was Li Xianyi angrily returning to his house to sleep upon dumping his math book on the table. From Li Xianyi's distress, plus 999. Lu Shu felt rather strange. What happened? Chapter 175, I am Lu Xiaoyu's parent, Part 3. Li Xianyi was angered and returned home without a word. Alone, Lu Shu was trying to understand the changes in his qi. He had no idea that the first breakthrough of vitality training was to unlock the sea of qi. But he had a feeling that the vitality was related to this sea of qi. Lu Shu was shouting and training, and at the same time feeling the changes to his qi. The more he focused, the stronger his qi felt. The change was slow, but he could definitely feel it. At this time, he was thinking, what would happen if he ate more qi fruits? Li Xianyi wanted to sleep at home, but how could he when Lu Shu was shouting outside? The old man did not understand. Why did his master prank him in the past, but now that he wanted to prank Lu Shu, it failed? What sort of luck did Lu Shu have? He stood up and walked to the yard with a black face once again. Stop shouting, stop shouting. Shouting once is enough. The first breakthrough of vitality would be to unlock the sea of qi using your will, thus cultivating the birth of your sword within the sea of qi. It's different from training the sword by effort. In our swordplay, your will is the aura of your sword. The qi outside the sea of qi is your will. Once it is sufficient, it can break through your sea of qi, but before unlocking the sea of qi, the more will accumulated, the better it is in the future. So it is best for you to slowly accumulate it and not rush. Unlocking it earlier isn't necessarily better. Upon finishing, the old man returned to his house. Although he was angry, he was afraid of ruining Lu Shu's future if he didn't explain everything to him. Lu Shu stayed rooted in the yard. So this was what the qi fruit did. And Li Xianyi said to not be anxious about having a breakthrough. The more he accumulated, the better his future would be. The parent meeting was planned to start at 7 p.m. as the normal students were still having lessons. Lu Shu came very early and didn't step in. Students were walking everywhere in their blue and white uniform. The weather in May was rather hot and some students untucked their shirts as they walked. Some students discussed which internet cafe to go later for Dota, and there were male students pushing their bicycles alongside female students and joking with them. The female students walked as they laughed while not even turning to look at the male students in fear of being made fun of. Lu Shu felt youth reverberating from these students. It was brilliant and jubilant like a shimmering and glowing sea. After Luocheng International School cancelled their night self-study sessions, it caused the principal much trouble and brought countless joy to the students. Many students from other schools regretted not enrolling into Luocheng International School. At this moment on Beimeng Mountain, the parents who lost their children were still in a deadlock with the Heavenly Network. Some parents even stopped their cars at restricted areas while others brought white banners every day. Lu Shu felt as if the dawn of the new era had separated his new life from his old one. His fate was totally different from before. When the students finally left, Luocheng International School restored its original peace and tranquility amid the occasional bark from annoyed security guards, who were making sure that no students were hiding inside. Now, no student was so playful anymore. At the start there was a handful, but not anymore. But the quality of the security guards was high, and they managed to complete their assigned tasks daily. Parents started to gather outside the school and they had to have their child's school pass to enter. The security wasn't too stringent today, and as long as they had a pass in their hand, they could enter. It was 6:50 p.m. and the security guards started to admit people in. Lu Shu had his glasses on and walked straight into class F9. There was no other person in class currently, but within 2 minutes, parents started streaming in. No one sat on the seats as the person in charge was yet to arrive, so parents stood near the door to chat. These parents who could attend the meeting were parents of those students who did not suffer tragically from the remain, as those parents were not notified of this meeting. So compared to the atmosphere at Baimang Mountain, it was quite relaxed. After all, although the casualties caused by the Heavenly Network were numerous this time, everything was fine as long as the students were still alive. In fact, they weren't here to condemn the Heavenly Network today. The parents started talking to each other and most of the conversations went something like this. Hello, I'm whoever's father, you are?
Oh.
I've heard my child mention your child. He's impressive. I'm whoever's father. Most of the adults warmed up quickly and they could strike a conversation with 1 or 2 lines. I heard that there are still parents on MT Baimang. I wonder how this incident will be settled, sigh. My friend's child died in the Remain. Apparently, both sides have begun negotiations on settling the incident. No idea if the talks are going smoothly. After all, no amount of money could bring the child back to life. Nowadays, most households only have 1 child. The pain of losing a sole child would be unbearable to anyone. Luckily, our children are fine.
Yeah.
Lu Shu listened by the side and in some time, these people started chatting about the interesting events in Daoyuan class, but I heard about the mysteries of Daoyuan from my child this time. Have you heard of a student called Lu Shu? He has a few thousand pounds of strength and killed 10 skeletons alone in the Remain. The parents at the side seemed like they found a common topic to chat on. I've also heard of this student called Lu Shu. This Daoyuan class really develops such highly skilled individuals. In the past, how would anyone believe the existence of a person with such strength? My child didn't mention that he killed 10 skeletons, but he did say that this Lu Shu is powerful. I wonder if it's really true. Lu Shu was feeling proud and haughty at the side as he listened to their conversation. So his classmates actually praised him behind his back? But this was too exaggerated, resulting in him being rather embarrassed. He then said ecstatically, "Your child got it wrong. It wasn't 10, it was 50. The parents looked towards him and inspected him. Whose parent are you? You look really young.
Yeah.
I'm Lu Xiaoyu's parent. Oh, Lu Xiaoyu's parent. I've heard my child mention your child before. Really impressive. I've heard from my child too. Lu Xiaoyu is really helpful. Lu Shu was laughing hysterically inside. As if I'd believe your lies.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens.